The air in the corridor tasted of smoke and burnt metal. Leo Cruz pressed his back against a cold wall, his breath a harsh rasp in his helmet. The evacuation was a mess. The distant thump of artillery was the only thing louder than the panicked shouts of the last civilians scrambling onto the transport ship. "Civilians are clear. Cruz, fall back to the rally point," a voice crackled in his ear. "Copy that. Moving," Leo said. He gestured to his squad, for men and women hugging the shadows. They moved as one, a well-oiled machine retreating down the wide, debris-strewn hallway. They were almost to the blast doors when the world turned white and silent. The explosion threw Leo forward. His helmet slammed into the deck, his ears ringing. He pushed himself up, his vision swimming. Where the blast doors had been was now a jagged hole open to the orange burning sky. 2 of his squad were gone. Just gone. The other 2, Maya and Ben, were struggling to stand. Then he saw them. Shapes moved through the smoke outside. They were not running. They were flowing, their dark armor seeming to drink the light. Eternans. They moved with a speed that was not human. It was a blur, a flicker of impossible motion. "Open fire," Leo screamed. The corridor erupted with the sound of their rifles. Muzzle flashes lit up the gloom. The Eternans did not dodge. They weaved through the gunfire like it was slow rain.
Ow.
Leo saw one round hit a soldier square in the chest. The Eternon staggered for a single step, then kept coming. Ben died first. An Eternan was just suddenly there, a combat knife flashing. He screamed, firing her weapon on full auto until the soldier was on her, silencing her with a brutal, efficient strike. Leo was alone. He backed away, firing until his rifle clicked empty. The Eternans advanced, their movements synchronized and eerily quiet. One of them, marked with a serpentine pattern on his shoulder, looked directly at Leo. He did not raise his weapon. Leo's hand found the seismic charge on his belt, his last resort. With a final defiant roar, he primed it and slammed it onto the floor. He turned and ran as the world behind him collapsed. The floor buckled, the ceiling caved in, and a wave of dust and rubble swallowed the Eternan squad. He stumbled, coughing, into a side passage. He leaned against the wall, his body trembling with adrenaline and fear. He had done it. He had stopped them. A sound made his blood freeze. It was the soft crunch of boot on gravel. From the settling dust, the Eternan with the serpent mark walked forward. His armor was scuffed, but he was unhurt. He had moved faster than the explosion. Leo closed his eyes, waiting for the end. It did not come. He opened his eyes. The Eternan, callsign Viper, stood a few feet away. Wasn't even looking at Leo. He was looking at a small, crushed object in his hand. He tossed it. It clattered and rolled to a stop at Leo's feet. It was a small, metallic can. Faded letters were still visible on its side. It was an old Earth energy drink, called Ultra Pulse. Viper's voice was cold and flat, devoid of any triumph. "Your people gave us the key. Your own reckless chemistry. We just improved it." Then he turned and was gone, a ghost in the smoke. Leo stood alone in the ruins, the crushed can at his feet. The enemy's words echoed in his mind, and a new, colder kind of fear began to take root. They had not lost to a better army, had lost to a perversion of their own world's past. The room was cold and gray. A single light shone down on a metal table. On the table sat the crushed can of Ultra Pulse. Leo Cruz sat across from Commander Eva Rostova. Her face was sharp, her eyes like chips of ice. She listened without moving as Leo told his story. He described the impossible speed, the way the Eternan Viper had survived the blast. He repeated the strange words about chemistry. When he finished, Rostova picked up the can. She turned it over in her hands. "He was not lying," she said, her voice flat. "This is not a joke." Decades ago, the Eternus Corporation was a consumer giant. They made drinks, foods, supplements. They wanted an edge. They conducted illegal trials on their own population. They used stolen stimulant formulas from Earth. They made them stronger, more potent. Leo stared at her. "A drink did this? Made soldiers that fast?" "Not just a drink," Rostova corrected. "A catalyst. It triggered a permanent change, a metabolic evolution. Their hearts, they do not rest. They operate at a peak rate, constantly. They do not need sleep. Their strength, their reflexes, their endurance, It is all a result of a system that never powers down. The sheer scale of it settled on Leo like a weight. This was not a new weapon. It was a new kind of human. The lights in the room flickered. Low hum died away, leaving a thick silence. Emergency strips along the floor glowed a dim red. "They are here," Rostova said, her voice a whisper. She stood up, drawing a pistol from a holster under her desk. "They found us." Leo grabbed his own weapon. The door to the office was locked. He could hear nothing from the other side. No alarms, no shouts, just silence. Then a soft thud against the reinforced door. Then another. It was the sound of metal bending. Leo and Rostova moved to the sides of the door, weapons raised. With a final wrenching screech, the door was torn from its frame. In the dark hallway stood two Eternan soldiers. Their dark forms were outlined in the red emergency light. Their eyes seemed to gleam. Rostova fired first. The shots were deafening in the small room. One Eternan moved, his head jerking to the side as the round grazed his helmet. The other lunged. Leo fired, hitting the soldier in the shoulder. It barely slowed him down. The fight was a blur of violent motion. Rostova was fast, precise. She used the desk for cover, her shots forcing the Eternans to take pause. Leo fought with raw desperation. He slammed the butt of his rifle into one soldier's face, hearing a crack. An Eternan knife flashed in the red light. Rostova cried out, stumbling back. Leo emptied the rest of his magazine into the soldier's chest, driving him back into the hallway. He slammed his hand on the wall panel, and a heavy security door slid down, sealing the broken doorway. He turned. Rostova was on the floor, leaning against the wall. Her hand was pressed to her side. Dark blood seeped between her fingers. Her face was pale. "They are not just soldiers," she gasped, her breath short. Her other hand fumbled in her pocket. She held out a small black data chip to Leo. Her fingers were slick with blood. "They are a signal," she whispered. "Hive mind. Synchronized by the same rhythm. Have to find the source." Leo took the chip. It felt cold. "Find the heart," Eva Rostova said. Then her eyes closed and her head slumped forward. The data chip felt heavy in Leo's pocket. He met Frank Wyatt in a dusty hangar on a dead moon. Wyatt was an engineer, a man with grease on his hands and a no-nonsense look. His team was small, just 3 others, checking over a sleek black infiltration ship. "Rostova's last message said you were the guy," Leo said, handing him the chip. Wyatt plugged it into a portable console. Schematics glowed in the air. A massive, complex machine, shaped like a spinning top, appeared. "The synchronizer," Wyatt said, his voice grim. "It's not just a machine, it's a conductor. It broadcasts a single perfect rhythm. That's what keeps them in sync." It's the heart Rostova mentioned. The plan was simple and suicidal. Slip through the Eternan lines, infiltrate their capital city, get inside the central spire, plant a resonant charge at the synchronizer's core. The resulting feedback would shatter their network, turning their perfect army into a confused mob. The flight was tense and silent. Dodge. Through the atmosphere, dodging patrols. The Eternan capital was a city of sharp silver towers under a pale green sky. They landed the ship in a crowded industrial sector, its dark hull blending with the shadows. The streets were clean and orderly. People moved with a strange, efficient grace. Leo and Wyatt's team moved through back alleys and service tunnels, their steps quick and quiet. They avoided the patrols of synchronized soldiers. The air hummed with a low, almost musical frequency, the sound of the heart. They reached the base of the central spire. It was a smooth column of black metal, towering over the city. A service entrance marked on Rostova schematics was their way in. Wyatt bypassed the lock with a quiet click. The door slid open into a dim, humming corridor. The inside was a maze of winding walkways and massive, vibrating machinery. The air was warm and thick with the energy of the synchronizer. They moved deeper, following the schematics on a wrist-mounted display. Finally, they reached the core chamber. It was a vast, circular room. In the center, a complex sphere of crystal and light pulsed with a steady, powerful beat. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It was the sound of a giant mechanical heart. "This is it," Wyatt said, his voice a whisper. He pulled the resonant charge from his pack. It was a small magnetic device. He moved towards the core, his steps careful on the metal grating. Leo kept watch, his weapon ready. The hum of the machine was everywhere, vibrating in his bones. Wyatt reached the base of the pulsating sphere. He raised the charge, ready to attach it to the core. Then he stopped. Out! His arm froze in midair. Leo turned. "Frank, what's wrong?" Wyatt slowly lowered the charge. He turned to face Leo. His expression was blank. Empty. There was no fear, no urgency, just a cold calm. "You can't stop a heartbeat, Leo," Wyatt said, his voice flat and monotone. "You can only join it." He tapped a finger against his own neck, just below the ear. But the skin there peeled back, revealing a small, glowing implant pulsing in time with the machine. He had been one of them all along. Alarms blared, shattering the steady hum. Red lights flashed. From the shadows of the chamber, Eternan guards emerged, their weapons raised, and moved to surround Leo. The castle bells rang one quiet afternoon, sounding not alarm, but surprise. A rider had been spotted far down the eastern road, carrying a flag of peace. The guards ran along the walls, calling for the gatekeeper. For weeks, every returning messenger had brought only sorrow. Yet this one carried hope. In the great hall, Queen Alara stood before the tall windows, her face pale from sleepless nights. She had not worn her crown for many days. It no longer felt like a symbol of rule, but of loss. When a guard rushed into the hall and bowed deeply, breathless, she turned quickly. "My queen," the guard said, his voice shaking, "we have seen a rider on the eastern path. There is another walking beside the horse. It looks like a young woman. We believe it is the princess." For a moment, Queen Alara could not breathe. She pressed a hand to her chest. Hope and fear flooded her heart at once. "Prepare the gates," she said softly, "and send the healer. Hurry." Outside, under the pale afternoon sun, Ethan and Leora came closer to the great castle walls. Both were covered in dust and dirt. The long journey had taken all their strength. Leora's hair was tangled, and Ethan's cloak was torn at the shoulder where a blade had grazed him days ago, but their eyes shone with quiet determination. The villagers along the road stopped their work and stared as the two passed by. Someone whispered, "It's her, the princess." Others dropped to their knees, overwhelmed. Word spread faster than the wind through fields of golden wheat. The princess who had vanished had returned alive. When the gates opened, the royal guards poured out, their armor gleaming. They approached carefully, uncertain how to greet the worn soldier who walked beside their heir. Ethan bowed low, helping Leora dismount. The moment her feet touched the ground, she stumbled from weakness. He caught her gently. "I told you we would reach home," he said with a half-smile. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "And we did, because of you." Then came the sound of quick steps. The great doors of the hall opened, and Queen Alara herself ran across the courtyard, her gown trailing behind her. Formality vanished. She threw her arms around her daughter. For a long time, mother and daughter held each other, saying nothing. The court stood in silence, moved by what they saw. Ethan turned away, humbled by the scene. He felt out of place among the shining marble and silk-clad nobles. Years of exile had made him used to rough roads and quiet forests, not halls filled with gold. He thought of slipping away, but before he could take a step, the queen spoke. "Wait," she said firmly. Her voice echoed across the courtyard. "Do not leave." Ethan turned back and bowed again. "Your Majesty, I only did what any man should do." Ilara looked at him closely. The lines of hardship on his face told a story without words. "Your name?" she asked. "Ethan Ward." The queen nodded slowly. "I know that name. You once served in the royal guard. You were blamed for the lost patrol years ago." "Yes, Your Majesty," he said quietly, "and I have carried that blame every day since." The queen stepped closer. "What? And yet you have carried my daughter safely through danger when others could not. Whatever your past, today you have redeemed it." A murmur swept through the crowd. The queen looked to her court and spoke again, her voice clear. "Let it be known to all that Ethan Ward is no longer a man of disgrace, but a man of honor. The crown owes him more than words." Ethan bowed deeply once more, speechless. Leora smiled faintly at him, pride shining in her tired eyes. That evening, the castle lit with hundreds of candles. The people gathered in the square below to celebrate the princess's return. Musicians played soft tunes and food was shared freely with all. For the first time in months, laughter filled the air instead of fear. In her private chambers, the queen sat with her daughter beside the hearth. "You have seen the world I could never show you," she said. "Tell me what you learned, my child." Leora looked into the fire. "I learned that our people are not against the crown. They are only lost, just as I was. They need to be seen, heard, and understood. If we rule with mercy, not fear, they will follow with love." Tears formed in the queen's eyes. "You speak with wisdom beyond your years. Perhaps your hardship was meant to open both our hearts." Later that night, as the hall quieted, Leora stepped out onto the balcony. Ethan stood below on guard, gazing across the valley. She called down softly, "Ethan, do you plan to stay?" He looked up with a calm smile. "If I am welcome to, Princess?" "Then you are," she said. "For Orient Vale will need men like you." And as the breeze lifted the curtains, the castle lanterns flickered like warm stars. The queen, watching from behind, whispered a prayer of thanks not only for her daughter's return, but for the man who had brought her home. For that night, peace came back to Orient Vale, quiet but true, written not in law or gold, but in courage, forgiveness, and love. Leo did not hesitate. He moved fast, but his shoulder burned, slowing him down. He was not fast enough to be a hero. He was only fast enough to be a soldier. He threw the data chip. It spun through the air, a small black sliver, and slotted perfectly into the console port. At the same time, he shouted down. Kalen dropped. Wyatt's gun fired. Shot went high, sparking off the metal ceiling. Leo slammed his fist on the console. A screen lit up red. The word uploading flashed. A brutal, screeching sound erupted from the speakers. It was not a sound of war. It was the sound of a machine dying, a rhythm tearing itself apart. The deep, steady thrum of the synchronizer faltered. It stuttered, choked, and then shattered into 1,000 different beats. The floor beneath them vibrated wildly. Wyatt screamed. It was a raw human sound of pure agony. He dropped his gun and clutched his head, falling to his knees. His body convulsed. The other Eternons in the core chamber below stumbled, their perfect coordination broken.
Ow.
They moved like drunk men, crashing into each other, confused and slow. The victory was not clean. It was chaos. Alarms blared. The entire spire shook. A support beam near the ceiling cracked and fell, crushing one of the disoriented Eternons. Another soldier was on his knees, weeping. Some turned on their former comrades in a blind, directionless rage. Leo grabbed Kalen. We have to go now. The escape was a nightmare of shaking corridors and falling debris. They were not fighting soldiers anymore. They were running through a collapsing madhouse. They saw Eternans staring at their own hands as if seeing them for the first time. They saw others simply lying on the floor, exhausted beyond measure. They reached a launch bay. A small scout ship was there, its engines warm. They scrambled inside. Leo fired the thrusters. The ship shot out of the bay just as the central spire began to fold in on itself, a tower of silver turning to dust. Leo guided the ship away from the dying city. He looked at the main screen. Reports were flooding in from the front lines. The Eternan war machine was broken. Their armies were in disarray. The war was over. He had won. Kalen sat in the co-pilot's chair, shaking. He looked out at the stars, his face pale. He was free from the hive mind, but he was not free from the memory of it. He turned to Leo, his eyes wide with a hollow fear. What do we do now? Leo had no answer. He looked at the ruins of the Eternan capital on the screen. He had not just defeated an enemy, he had destroyed a society. He had given them freedom, but he had also given them a terrible silence. He had saved his people, but the cost felt like a deep, cold stone in his chest. The war was over. But the quiet that followed was filled with a grief he did not know how to carry.